Welcome to Her Love of Sports with your host, Katie Hamilton.
Welcome to Her Love of Sports Community Spotlight. The community is the heart of sports, and we are excited to highlight some of the incredible people who go above and beyond for their community. Joining us today is a remarkable athlete who has dedicated her passion towards promoting Indigenous sport and inspiring youth. She is a two-time world champion in ultimate, participating in 4 world championships, bringing home 2 gold and 2 bronze medals. She has been recognized for her outstanding achievements by winning Canada's National Tom Longboat Award for Female Indigenous Athlete of the Year, among many others. Her remarkable contributions to the world of sports has inspired many athletes to pursue their dreams with dedication and commitment. Lara Mussell Savage, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Her Love of Sports. How are you doing?
I'm doing great today. Thank you so much for having me, Katie. I appreciate the invitation to be a part of your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm so glad to have you here and to learn all about you, your sport, and everything you've done in the community. So let's jump into it. There's so much to talk about, and we're going to get to all of it. But let's start off with how you got into sport.
Really, the influence for me was my parents, first and foremost. So both my mom and dad were active in softball, curling, cycling, golfing, just a whole bunch of sports, and really encouraged me and my sisters to participate in sport. And I think one of the greatest advantages I had with that influence was starting out in gymnastics, which just provides a really great foundation for coordination and balance, muscle strengthening, core strengthening, that can actually be an advantage to a whole bunch of sports. So that's one of the sports I really appreciate that my parents got us into. But yeah, for sure, it was the role model influence right directly in the home.
I love that. And so ultimate is your number one sport. That's so interesting to me. I've never met someone whose sport is ultimate. I mean, back in high school, I was talking that we used to play a lot in high school in our gym class and whatnot. And it was so much fun. So to meet someone who dedicated their sport to it and had such excellence is really very interesting and exciting to learn about. So talk to me about how you got into ultimate.
So I got into ultimate in my grade 12 year, so my last year of high school, and was competing in basketball. So I was a basketball athlete in grade 12. I did track and field, long jump, high jump, some of the sprinting events. So I was doing a few different things. But there was the BC Disc Sports Society at the time. So the provincial sport organization for disc sports has evolved over the years. So there was at that time an outreach program. So there was a couple of individuals who were going out to some of the high schools in Vancouver to introduce the sport of ultimate, known as ultimate frisbee at the time. And I was just so impressed with the disc skills and how much fun it was. And there was a core of us that actually really, really fell in love with the sport at the time and kept with it. So we started playing in grade 12 and then just stuck with it after that.
Wow, I love that. And you have been so successful in it. As I mentioned, competed in 4 world championships, winning 2 gold, 2 bronze medals. So you started in high school in grade 12. How did that transition to playing on the national team and getting to where you were?
Yeah. So we, when I say we, I'm talking about those of us in grade 12 that really fell in love with the sport. There was a core group of us that were like, wow, this sport is so much fun. We actually had our high school ultimate team enter into the Vancouver Ultimate League that summer. So after graduation, those of us who had the high school team, we kept playing and entered our team into the recreational league for Vancouver Ultimate League, which is one of the biggest leagues in Canada. And we kept going from there, so playing recreationally and then learning about the Vancouver club competitive circuit. So there was a Vancouver women's club scene that went to competitive tournaments. And I was encouraged by my husband to try out because he started playing competitive ultimate in the open division in the men's side. And he said, I think you should really try. And I'm so glad he encouraged me because it just opened up such an amazing pathway for me. And basically I kind of forgot about all other sports that I was passionate about, and everything became about ultimate for many, many years. So yeah, it was really through encouragement from my husband and going from like recreational play 2, 3 times a week to trying out for the Vancouver Women's Club competitive team, known as Prime. They were called GOO at first.
Okay.
Silly name. It stood for Guest of Oprah. But then it got changed to Prime, like after 1 year of me being on the team. So for many years they were known as GOO, but shortly after I joined, the name got changed quite quickly. So it was known as Prime for almost the entire time I played with that team.
Wow, I love that. And for those who are listening, and even for myself, can you kind of give a little bit? I'm sure there's so many rules and guidelines to the sport, but kind of just give a little debrief, just for those listening who aren't too sure, who have heard about Ultimate, but aren't too sure the rules or how it's played.
Yeah. Oh, I encourage anyone to Google it and check out some of the videos. But it was invented by some university students out in Boston in the late 60s. So quickly took popularity through the 70s and 80s. I think the first world championships were in the 1980s decade in there. But it got the name Ultimate because essentially it actually takes a lot of elements from a number of sports. So similar to football, where you need to complete a pass in an end zone. Same kind of movements that you might see in soccer or football with making cuts to get open and you have defenders, similar to basketball where, instantly when there's a turnover, you go the other direction. D becomes O, offense becomes defense, right? It's similar to basketball that way. So you actually see a lot of the same elements drawn from a number of other sports. So that's actually how it got named Ultimate, because it was like the ultimate aspects of sports kind of all rolled in. And a lot of ultimate players, there's the phrase that when a ball dreams, it dreams it's a frisbee, because there's just such amazing things you can do with a disc that you just can't do with a ball. You can make it bounce off the ground, although that's not legal in ultimate, and you can give it such flight and curves, and there's so many different kinds of throws, the hammer, the scuba, the flick. So there's lots of lingo too in the game. So yeah, if anyone's interested in seeing just how exciting the game can be and how much running is involved, to look it up. One aspect of the game that is super unique to it is the self-refereeing aspect. So there's an element to Ultimate called the spirit of the game. And it's one of the most fundamental and important aspects to our sport is this culture around the spirit of the game. And that is all about respect for the rules, but also respect for your opponents in the game. And so it is a self-refereed sport. So you call fouls, you call your own fouls. You also work out disputes with your teammate, and it's all done under this culture of respect, and this acknowledgement of this interconnectedness between us all out on the field. So it's actually a really, really neat part of the game. And also what contributed to many of us falling in love with it is just this whole aspect of the spirit of the game. When you're finished a game, you get together in like what many of us call a spirit circle. So you're kind of arm in arm or standing in a circle intermixed with your opponents. And you take a moment to acknowledge what you're taking away from that game, what you might have learned from your opponents, or how you enjoyed, whether you win or lose. You're sharing what you've learned or what you're taking away as a sign of respect to your teammates. Sometimes you may even like sing a song or offer a gift or something neat like that. You even can see stuff like that. And that even happens at the world level where the teams will do spirit circles at the end of the game. Yeah, it's really
That's
cool.
so special. Yeah, no, it's great. It's great to hear that there's that sportsmanship going on and not having a referee as well, like doing, as you said, self-referee. And it's like you said, there's so much to it as well, right? It's the fitness. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if you have the frisbee, you're not allowed to run. You have to stay in one spot.
That's
Is that
right.
correct?
You have
And
to
you can
stop
pivot.
running. That's right. So pivot on one foot like basketball when you stop dribbling and you have to establish a pivot foot. Yeah, same idea.
Right. So there's many aspects of it. And like you said, I know I've watched many Ultimate and Frisbee YouTube videos back in the day of seeing all the different types of shots and just the technical ability. And I could never dream of being able to do that. So it's really outstanding, the skill and technique that these athletes do with the Frisbee during the game. And just back to like the pivoting, you can't run with the Frisbee. Is there so much athletic ability and endurance and speed that comes from beyond of getting probably in place to receive the Frisbee? So talk to me about what kind of training physically goes into being a athlete in ultimate?
Yeah, good question. It is really grueling. I believe there was even a university study, and I'm not going to remember which one it was, like University of New Mexico or somewhere in the United States did a study on the output of an ultimate athlete, and it's comparable to a striker in soccer. So there is just a lot of running, and you can't make a substitution change until a point has been scored. So there can be some points that are really, really long. So it's not like hockey, where you can go out there for a minute or two and you're putting out 110% effort, and then
Yeah.
on the fly, when there's the right moment, you can do a sub on the fly. Ultimate doesn't have that luxury. So some points that are really long can be extra grueling. So the kind of training I think would be similar that you would see to basketball or soccer athletes, needing a lot of, fast twitch muscle movements, be able to sprint fast to get yourself open like you would see in football or soccer to try and get open for a pass. So that's required, as well as, jumping and reading the disc is a really important skill. So
Right.
knowing how the timing of a jump when you're going up for a disc that's high in the air and being able to read it, because depending on the wind or the way it's floating or the angle, some drop faster than others. So that's an important skill too. And the throwing just takes a ton of practice, like as in any sport, right? You put the hours of practice in and the better throwing you can get. So, but the nice thing is about the sport is you really just need the disc and some space. So, you can play outside, you can play in a gym, and you can have the modified rules for those types of scenarios when you're inside. But that's one of the nice things. It's really highly accessible sport. You just need the disc and some friends.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, absolutely. And I'm here on Vancouver Island in Victoria, and lots of beaches like in Vancouver and stuff. So you always see, especially now, the sun's coming out, it's getting a little nicer. So for the next few months, you see quite a few friends out there throwing the Frisbee. And there's just something about it that's community and just this joy and happiness. You could be camping and have a Frisbee and have a little bit of space. And of course, it's not ultimate, right? But even just kind of like throwing a
No, but
ball in baseball.
that's right. There are some fun modified games you can do with the disc. There's double disc court, there's Goaltimate, there's beach ultimate, there's all sorts of fun things you can do with the disc golf. We can't leave that one out too. There's so many amazing disc golf courses around BC. So yeah, I'm highly in favor of the things you can do with the disc and all the fun games you can do with friends.
Now, talk to me. So, you're the director at iSpark, which is Indigenous Sport, Physical Activity, and Recreation Council. So, tell me more about this. This is how I came across you. And I was just blown away by your contribution to the community and everything you've achieved in athletics. So, talk to me more about iSpark.
Yeah, thank you. So iSpark is an acronym for our organization name. It stands for Indigenous Sport, Physical Activity and Recreation Council. So we are a provincial organization, and really our organization works to try to maximize opportunities for Indigenous communities to improve health outcomes through sport and physical activity. So we promote healthy opportunities, training opportunities, sport camps and clinics. There's a whole variety of initiatives that we oversee across the province, working directly with Indigenous communities, and that's inclusive of the over 200 First Nation communities across BC, but also the over 30 Métis chartered communities, as well as the Inuit population as well. So we are inclusive to all of the Indigenous people in BC to access the opportunities that are offered. And we partner with a lot of sport organizations in delivering sport programming with communities. And we also try to be ensuring that we're community driven so that the communities are helping co-design and co-develop the kinds of programming they would like to see in communities. So if a community, for example, is interested in getting their kids into archery, maybe it's reviving canoe paddling in their community. That was an example with the Dididat First Nation. They were once a paddling community, and a decade ago they recognized there wasn't much paddling happening in their community. So we worked together with them to get canoe programming going, and now they're an active paddling community. So we're just, very much trying to be community driven in the programming that's offered. And we're very also youth focused on the sports side, trying to create try it events with it. So that might be a 1-day come out and try ringette. It could be a multi-week program for, flag football, whatever it is that the community is interested in. We try to facilitate that or enable that or help make it happen. So that's kind of what we're about. And we have now grown to over 20. We're probably about 25 staff now across the province.
Wow.
Specializing in different areas. So there's, our Health Beat program, or the Warriors of Wellness, our Fit Nation program, lots of things on that healthy living kind of side. And then on the sports side, we oversee Team BC for the North American Indigenous Games, and just preparing now for Team BC's participation in the National Aboriginal Hockey Championships. So we are a really big team now, and I started out with the organization in 2010, together with our CEO, Rick Brandt, who got the organization up and running after leading the 2008 North American Indigenous Games in Cowichan. He remained in BC to really help the organization grow. And so I've been with the organization for almost 14 years now, and it's just been an absolute dream job to be supporting opportunities, sport and physical activity opportunities in Indigenous communities. As I'm of Indigenous ancestry myself, I'm coming to you today from my home territory of Squaw First Nation, here in Chilliwack, so here on the res. So it's really important to me as an Indigenous person as well to help spread the positivity that sport brings. We always say movement is medicine, sport is medicine. And it's such an easy medicine to swallow because it can be so fun, and you're making friends and learning all of these great life skills at the same time that you're getting healthy and getting fit and not even realizing it because you're just having such a good time participating in it. So it's been a dream job to be working with iSpark all these years.
Thank you for sharing. That's fantastic, all the work that you guys have been doing and continue to do. So can you just talk about the importance of the Indigenous recognition in sports and also what we can do to support it?
Yeah. So just interestingly, soccer is one, I think, of the most popular sports among Indigenous communities in BC. Basketball could be a tie between basketball and soccer. There's lacrosse is also really popular. It's just so important our Indigenous communities to be engaged and involved in sport. The soccer circuit, the native soccer circuit, the Indigenous basketball opportunities, the All Native tournament that's in Prince Rupert every year, the Junior All Native basketball tournament that takes place annually, like those events go back decades. I believe the All Native is now 60, 70 years old, with many of the native soccer tournaments having the same types of anniversaries going back 70, 75 years of existence. So it just speaks to the importance of sport within our communities and the opportunities. So the unfortunate legacy of the Indian residential school system really has affected and negatively impacted our communities generationally. But there are many elders who are residential school survivors who have spoken about how sport has been a source of freedom. iSpark senior advisor and Elder Alec Nelson is one of those individuals. He's a residential school survivor, and he talks about how soccer was a source of freedom for him while he was in residential school. So for our communities to be able to access sport is so important. And there's many communities that don't have sport facilities in their community. They might be very isolated and remote. Maybe they have a hall. Maybe they have a field. And so, when there are those things available, we want to be able to help support communities in doing that with our organization. Also partnerships with local municipalities for those that are closer to urban or within urban settings, and developing those relationships. So we also are mindful of working with our partners to help them with training and strategies for creating safe and welcoming spaces for Indigenous participants in their programs too. So that's an important part of our work as well. So the sporting history within our communities goes back, of course, well before, colonization here. And we still want to celebrate that and showcase that whenever possible. And if people are interested to learn more about Indigenous sport history, there are lots of efforts being made to honor the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. There are actually 5 out of the 94 calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action. 5 of them are dedicated to sport. And in one of those calls, it refers to a call to government and to work with Indigenous communities and sports halls of fame, in order to help better tell the story of Indigenous athletes within Canada and our histories. So the BC Sports Hall of Fame just launched on Monday, Katie. So just launched on Monday an Indigenous Sport Gallery online. So they have an Indigenous Sport Gallery inside their doors, which is located inside BC Place Stadium. So inside that stadium is an actual museum, which is the BC Sports Hall of Fame. And there's a 1,500 square foot or so gallery dedicated to Indigenous sport. And it's the only one really of that size within Canada. So they've just launched a digitized version of that gallery. So you can visit their website and you can actually explore and interactively walk through the gallery on the website, learn some of the timeline and history, both within Indigenous history as well as some Indigenous sport history in that timeline. So lots of really great education available for anyone who wants to learn more, as well as visiting iSpark's website too, ispark.ca. That's ISPARC for the listeners if they're wanting to learn more about iSpark.
Yes, thank you for sharing. That's very exciting. And to have that accessible online for people who might not live in BC. I work at BC Place quite often for some sporting events, and I haven't been inside the BC Hall of Fame yet. It just hasn't lined up, but I've always wanted to. So to have it accessible online as well, and to read about the Indigenous sports community and history is very special. So thank you for sharing for everyone listening and for myself that's available for us. So thank you. You are one of 5 experts invited to join the BC 2030 feasible team with the 4 host First Nations to explore Indigenous led bid to host the 2030 Winter Games. Now, I don't believe it went through, but could you tell me a little bit about that in your involvement?
Yeah, so I had the honor of being a part of the Vancouver Organizing Committee for the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games, known as VANOC, in the lead up to 2010. So I was with that organization for 5 years and was a part of the Indigenous participation team that worked hand in hand with the 4 host First Nations and the Forest First Nations Society that was formed in order to help support their participation in the Games, as they were the first ever Indigenous host nations to be recognized as a host partner to an Olympic Games. So that was already an unprecedented beginning to Indigenous involvement in an Olympic and Paralympic hosting scenario. So our team, in working hand in hand with the 4 host First Nations, looked to try to maximize opportunities for Indigenous participation, whether it was in procurement opportunities, with catering or construction opportunities. We also looked at the volunteering aspect, getting sport and youth related programs that connected to the coming of the Olympic Games, education opportunities. It was just really endless, economic development opportunities. So there was a lot of really great work behind the scenes. For example, the commitment of the host of VANOC and its partners to ensure that any official souvenir item that was an Indigenous item was authentic, that it was an authentically Indigenous made and designed and created item. Those kinds of things were also unprecedented. So being a part of that team was a fantastic experience. And when there was this movement being led by the four host nations, as well as interest from the COC, the Canadian Olympic Committee, to potentially explore an Indigenous-led bid to bring the Games back to Canada in the year 2030, I was invited back. I was a part of a group that was formed to help support the feasibility study at the start and taking the steps towards this potential bid. And yeah, unfortunately, it didn't come through in the end. Without the support of the province of BC, it just wouldn't be possible to advance a bid to bring a games to BC. So I do remain hopeful that one day, a games will come back. And if it's not BC, somewhere in Canada, but just so important to have the Indigenous host partners either co-leading it or leading that bid. I just think that is so important.
Yes, absolutely. And please let us know and reach out if there's any way that the community and we can help support if there's another one that you want to bid for or something like that, if there's any way to support, because that would truly be something historic for the community, the province, the country, just everything. So Chilliwack Sports Hall of Fame, North American Indigenous Athletics Hall of Fame for your achievements in and contribution to sport. You've had so many achievements, such a career. Is there one that sticks out to you, a highlight of your career? It could be achievement, something, a tournament, anything. What would be one that sticks out to you most?
What a good question. So, yeah, it's, I can't not mention how amazing it was to be a part of Team Canada and to make the podium and, to achieve something at the world's level was something I always wanted as a young kid. I didn't know it was going to be in ultimate at the time. So of course that reigns very high, but I think as far as, achievements, it's being chef de mission for Team BC for the North American Indigenous Games. So I got to do that for 2014 and 2017. And in my first, year, with the 2014 games as chef de mission for the team. Now, Team BC for those games is, approximately 535, 550, somewhere in there. Indigenous athletes and coaches and mission staff going to this international event that is approximately 6,000 participants. So it's even bigger than the Canada Summer Games in terms of participation size. And, wow. And helping lead Team BC into those games, was probably one of my most proudest achievements, as, our team not only won the overall team award for winning the most medals, and there's approximately 20 participants. So all the provinces and territories from Canada participate, as well as a number of, states within the United States also participate in this international event. But we also were awarded the Spirit Award. So, and that was awarded by, it's called the John Fletcher Spirit Award. So it's named after one of the founding fathers of the games, and it's voted on by the teams as, and awarded to a team that exemplifies the ideals of the NAIG, which is, respect, honesty, integrity, trust, sportsmanship. So the team that embodied that, it's voted on by the teams, and Team BC won that. So that was the first time ever a team not only won the overall team award, but also won this, really special Spirit Award. So that was an incredible achievement to be a part of, and to have led that team into those games was definitely a highlight for me.
That's fantastic. Congratulations on it, and just truly inspiring everything you've accomplished. It's been fantastic hearing about your story, and for everyone listening, yeah, just such an inspiration. Okay, a couple more questions. Are there any athletes that you looked up to growing up or even currently?
Oh, well, absolutely. Lori Fung was huge. So for those who don't know who Lori Fung is, she is a rhythmic gymnast, and she was, one of Canada's athletes in the 1984 Summer Olympic Games that was held in Los Angeles. And so I was, I'm going to date myself here. I was 10 years old and, practiced gymnastics. That was one of the sports I was involved in as a kid. And she was a gal from Burnaby and was featured in these games. Rhythmic gymnastics was being featured in those games for the very first time. So there was a lot of attention around rhythmic gymnastics, and because it was a new sport to the Olympic Games. And Lori Fung won a gold medal, and just seeing her on the podium, seeing her compete, she was an absolute inspiration for me. And she's the person who helped me realize that, wow, you mean somebody local and young, like they can go to that level? Like, I didn't know you could do that. You just always think, oh, that can't happen in my community, or that doesn't happen in our area. You never hear about somebody doing that. So when I learned that she was actually pretty local, and a BC young woman, it inspired me to start realizing I could do the same. I could do something. And I don't mean be an Olympic medalist in rhythmic gymnastics, but it opened my eyes to like being able to go as far as you can in a sport. And so that very day that actually she was on our television set and winning that gold medal, I went right up to my mom and said, Mom, I want to go to the Olympic Games. And I don't mean in the seats. I don't mean as a spectator. I meant like, I want to compete. So I didn't end up going to the Olympic Games. However, did end up going to as far as you can in the sport that I ended up falling in love with, which was ultimate. And I also got to be a part of the Olympic movement as well by being a part of the organizing committee. So, absolutely. Role models make a huge difference, in the lives of kids, and influencing, maybe creating dreams or realizing that dreams really can come true. So Lori Fung was absolutely that for me. As I got a little bit older, I really, was so impressed with Steffi Graf with tennis, and just how far she took things in her sport. So, there's a lot of amazing female athletes out there that have been inspirational, but I'm going to go right back again and say my parents were also really big influences for me. So it's so important to have people like that in your life. And that's another thing that we try to do in our Indigenous communities, is really celebrate and promote role models, positive role models. Because when you see someone who's just like you out there and succeeding, it makes you realize that you can do the same thing. So that's exactly what it was for me, seeing this young local gal from Burnaby go all the way.
And now you are in that role. You are a role model for so many athletes from everywhere. And looking at you and trying to follow your footsteps and just everything that you've accomplished. So I love how that has now grown into this. Okay, final question for you, Lara. Thank you so much for your time. Any advice you would give to any young athletes, kind of following up from what we just talked to about following their dreams, any advice you would give to young athletes looking to pursue their dreams in sport?
Yeah, I think advice I would share would be always trying to walk with gratitude. That's one of the teachings within our Indigenous community, is to really recognize that interconnectedness that we all share. So, it's just so, I don't know, it's a good karma thing, really, to just walk with gratitude, just knowing that opportunities that come your way, embrace them, and just always embrace them with gratitude. So, when you're a kid making your way through sport, was it your grandma who drove you to your practice? Your coach, many coaches, they're volunteers, they do that from their passion, out of their heart. It could be your teammate who brought the cut up oranges that week, to the practice, like someone who pointed out that your shoelace wasn't tied, and just when you walk through life with gratitude, you end up, I think, just having a lot more warmth in your heart and joy. And it can also lend you to wanting to be that person as well, that's offering kindness or a moment of empathy, or offering that high five, or say, great shot, Joe, and give that, the high five and a smile to a teammate. So that would be my advice. And I think that when you walk through life with gratitude, it can actually, whether it's on the field or off the field, just in life in general, just how much more of a joyful and positive pathway you can experience. I think that would be the advice I'd offer.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I love that. And I know for me, for coaching and stuff, we talk about communication a lot. And for me, my perspective personally, I've in the girls' side, sometimes the communication isn't there as much. So we try to instill and say like, hey, communication both on the pitch and off. Little things like, hey, great pass. Love when you're doing this. You work hard. They go such a long way too in keeping your teammates engaged in the game and what's going on, but then also building that teamwork and just working together. So I love that you emphasize that as well, of just the gratitude and also the encouraging bit. I think is very important and special in team sports and individual sports, but for youth especially going forward.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Lara, thank you so much. You were truly inspiring. I've loved learning about you, your career, all the contributions you've done for the community, both Indigenous and your achievements. You're such a role model in the province, in the country, in the sport. So thank you so much for your time and being with us here on Hello
Katie,
Sports.
The respect and admiration is mutual. I really appreciate you inviting me to be a part of your podcast. And I think that what you are doing and the stories that you are sharing are so valuable and so important. So just right back at you with some appreciation your way as well. Thanks again for having me.
For more information on Her Love of Sports, visit herloveofsports.com or on our social at Her Love of Sports.